Well, good morning. It is a bright and chilly morning here. In fact, I was at the gas station earlier this morning. The wind was blowing and the snow was blowing off the top of the gas pump, and the face of the gas pump was all caked with snow. I was brushing that off. And when I started pumping, we drive an old General Motors product, and they're famous for, or infamous, for having the fuel vapor recovery system get plugged up. And so the pressure builds up as you're filling the tank and clicks the automatic shutoff. So every so often, in our case, it's like every 1.5 gallons to maybe 2 gallons at a time, it'll click off. So you reach over and you clamp it shut again, or clamp it open and let the fuel flow. And it'll run for, a few seconds to get a couple gallons in, clicks off, and you do it again and again and again and again. Well, this morning, it was cold. It was a little bit irritating, a little bit frustrating, and it was cold. There was a truck that pulled up waiting for the pump where I was, and they saw what was happening. They backed up and went to a different pump, and I don't blame them at all. I would have done the same thing. And this story is easy to tell. It's not an uncommon story. A lot of people with this era of General Motors cars have to deal with that. And so a lot of people could tell the same story. It's an easy story. I use English words to communicate the ideas that are in my head and the story that happened. But when the Apostle Paul now is writing to the church in Corinth, this second letter, getting closer to the end of it, he's telling them, look, I have things that I could boast about if boasting was helpful. Boasting is not helpful. But because that's what gets your attention, I want to tell you some things. And he's listed all these other things that he's experienced physically, and now he's moving into some spiritual experiences. And one of them here is outlined. I seem to be missing a slide. I'm going to back up a couple. One of them is outlined here. He says, and I know such a man who was caught up to the third heaven, where the place where God dwells, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know. God knows. He was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words which a man is not permitted to speak. On behalf of such a man I will boast, but on my own behalf I will not boast except in regard to my weaknesses. So here, the Apostle Paul is outlining the fact that he has had experiences that most people have never even imagined. Not only has he experienced all these physical challenges and emotional challenges, and now he's explaining a spiritual experience that he had, and he says, look, I will boast on his behalf, but not on mine. This guy that has this experience, and now he's referring to himself in the third person, I could boast about that. But he heard words that not only are unlawful for a man to speak, but I think, by the way he phrased this, that they're inexpressible. There's no way his tongue, his vocal cords, his lips could speak those words. And they're not even permitted. They're inexpressible and not permitted. What he saw cannot be described in human language. Whenever I read through the Revelation that the Apostle John wrote, I'm amazed at the beautiful word pictures that he draws in my mind and in my heart. But I know he must have been so frustrated trying to describe what he saw with the vocabulary that was available. And here the Apostle Paul said, I experienced these things, whether I was in the body, whether my body went or my body didn't go, I don't know. He says God knows, because God knows everything. But that man heard words that were inexpressible and language that's not permitted for people to speak. That ought to put a filter in place when someone says, I'm speaking, or I spoke last night in the angelic language. But when somebody says that, boy, the alarm bells start going off in my head, and I'm remembering this verse where the angels have a language, obviously. Heaven has a heavenly language that's inexpressible by us, and it's not even permitted for us to speak. And I'm reminded that God has prepared a place for us that is beyond what we can even imagine. I'm so excited about getting to go home one day, to see Jesus face to face, to hear the sounds and hear the expressions of heaven. I'm not even sure my ears or your ears could handle the sound. I'm convinced that there are colors beyond what our mortal eyes can perceive. We have these five senses, and they serve us very well in this creation. But I'm not convinced that those are the only five senses. I'm not convinced that the colors of the rainbow are the only colors. The sounds of the scale are the only sounds. The combinations and the expanse and the range are far beyond what we experience here in this life. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the Apostle Paul's candor, his honesty, and his expression that I will boast, but the only thing I can boast about is my weakness. Because look what God can do with somebody like me. I love the idea that God can take you and accomplish his purpose. He could take me and accomplish his purpose. God bless you. He loves you, and we love you too.